Chapter 62-73. When Steve was growing up, he was taught that there was no so-called yin and yang harmony in dealing with enemies. It was only a matter of life and death. If you were not as strong as the other party, you would learn to be patient. If you were stronger than the other party, you would kill them with one blow. However, Charlie's reminder also helped him open up new ideas. It turned out that in addition to enslaving and driving people like slaves, you could also control them like cattle and horses. After understanding this, he was no longer anxious and said with a smile, "Let's see how far they can go." Charlie looked at the excited but uneasy crowd and smiled calmly. "I think they should soon fall into a stalemate. One side finds that it can't do anything to the other side, and the other side is also afraid of it. But the object of fear has not stood up to express its attitude for a while. So it will also be unpredictable. So I guess everyone will be in a dilemma after shouting." The quarrel at this time was indeed somewhat weaker than before, although Jimmy expressed his willingness to stand together with everyone. Nate's focus was not on Jimmy but on Steve. In his opinion, he was only afraid of Steve in the whole audience today. Just now, Steve stated that he was Jimmy's friend, which meant that he would support Jimmy. Therefore, he really didn't dare to offend Jimmy. But now, Jimmy has obviously gone a little too far. He didn't even ask Steve's opinion, but he directly stood up for all senior partners. Now he has to see whether Steve will continue to endorse him unswervingly. If Steve expresses his position, it means that he has completely lost. Because of this, he has been secretly looking at Steve, wanting to see if he will stand up and speak for Jimmy at this time. And those who have experienced the same thing as Jimmy are also waiting for Steve to speak up for Jimmy. After all, Jimmy is now fighting for the initiative for them. And Nate has already made his attitude clear. He will not embarrass Jimmy again, but he will not let others go. If Steve does not support Jimmy, Nate will definitely not give Jimmy this face. However, Steve, who was being watched by everyone, had no intention of standing up to express his position at this moment. He saw that both sides were quietly looking at him, and he understood what Charlie had just said. If he directly expressed his position on behalf of Jimmy, the situation today would be out of control, and Nate's majesty and threat in front of these people would be swept away. These people would leave Ellis Law Firm as soon as possible, and then rush to the next stop, without looking back. In that case, the possibility of getting them to serve Charlie in China is almost zero. Therefore, these people still have to rely on Nate to restrain and check. In this case, he must not stand up directly to support Jimmy. So, the scene soon fell into a deadlock as Charlie said. After Jimmy finished his lofty words, Nate did not respond. And the senior partners standing behind Jimmy were unsure and did not dare to express their opinions rashly. The scene suddenly became quiet, and even a little awkward. Charlie was almost transparent in the eyes of these people. So he watched everyone's expression change coldly from the side. The longer this awkward situation lasted, the more nervous and uneasy the expressions of those behind Jimmy became. On the contrary, Nate on the opposite side became more and more relaxed. This was because Nate knew very well that Steve had enough strength and face to stand up directly and make him compromise, and he would certainly not have any possibility of resistance. But the key is that Steve has not expressed his position for a long time. This proves that he does not want to do this. This is of course a good situation for himself. At this time, the colleagues behind Jimmy could no longer hold back. Someone whispered in Jimmy's ear and said anxiously, "Jimmy, you are familiar with Mr. Rothschild. Ask him to say a word for us. Our future depends on him." Jimmy knew Steve's approach very well. Others treated Charlie as transparent. He knew that everything was controlled by Charlie behind him. When to show up, how to show up, and what kind of plan to give. In all these issues, Steve must follow Charlie's requirements. So, he whispered, "Mr. Steve was only willing to help me solve this problem before. So I don't know if he is willing to help everyone solve the problem. After all, he doesn't owe us anything. The man was even more worried when he heard this. What if Steve was really only willing to protect Jimmy? Then the future of others would basically be over.